Hey guys, well, there is a new Lotus, a brand new Lotus. They don't come out very often, let's be honest. They're not McLaren, are they? So, being a Lotus fan, those of you that follow me know that I am a big Lotus fan. So it was inevitable that I was going to have to say a little something about this new car. And I'll do that right after this. What's this, you're thinking? Why is he wearing a mask? Well, because I'm quite blatantly modeling my Merc. Check it out. So the hat, you can get from Patreon. So if you go onto Patreon, you can, if you take on a certain tier of membership, you'll get a hat. This is new. And of course, my shirt. Did you see that? Did you check that out? A shirt, right? Brown car guy. All of these things you can get on, I'll put a link below, or if you go into Instagram and go into the links and you'll see Merc, you go there and you can order it from there. It's actually from Redbubble. So I'll take that off now. But there you go. That's what it is. It's double layered. So there you go. Pretty good, yeah? Anyway, to the subject at hand. Not my merchandise, but the Lotus Emira. Now, by the way, Emira is actually it goes across countries, but particularly I would know it as an Arabic name, and it's a princess basically. So it's a princess, so it's kind of nice, it's kind of fitting for what is essentially being dubbed the last ICE Lotus. By ICE I mean internal combustion engine. So let me tell you a little bit about this car before we get into it. You can obviously see it coming up on there. So the Emira should be, you know what, before I do that, I should just mention that it's not what I was expecting it to be. I'll come back to that. So the Lotus Emira is basically, they discontinued the Elise and the Exige and the Evora. All of those cars are basically doing their last edition runouts this year. So the Emira is basically replacing all of those cars and will come out by spring next year. There'll be two engines on this thing. They're sticking with a V6 supercharged from Toyota, which they currently have in the Exige, for example, and the Evora. They're going to stick with that one. In addition to that, with one of their new technology partners, because Lotus has these arrangements with people. Don't forget, Lotus is now owned by Geely or Geely, whatever you want to call them, the big Chinese company that also owns Volvo and the London EV company, which is the ones that produce the new London taxis. And they like investing a lot of money into these brands. You've seen what they've done with Volvo, which is amazing stuff. Volvo and now Polestar. So, we can only hope for great things when it comes to Lotus. Now, the new technology partner I was referring to is AMG Mercedes, and so what they're doing is they'll be offering the Toyota V6 to start with, and then later by the summer of next year they will also offer a 4-cylinder version, which will actually be the 4-cylinder AMG engine. I think it's the one that is in the A class, the A45, or what is it called now? That one, the crazy hot hatch. I remember driving it as an A45. I don't know if they still call that. So that's up to 355 horsepower for that one. The Toyota one, of course, puts out, that's a 3.5, that puts out nearly 400 horsepower, so 394, or about 400 horsepower, let's just say. And that, of course, is in the Aurora. Now, this new Emira, admittedly, is not entirely all new, although it's being mooted as an all new car, certainly in terms of the looks, in terms of the interior, which I'll get onto, and in terms of the positioning of the car. It is all new for Lotus. It's kind of weird. It's very weird, and I'll come back to why in a minute, because it's like, it's new, but it's kind of old. It's sort of overlapping a new chapter and then closing another one. So we'll come on to that. Just to add to that, to the engine choices, it will have a manual and automatic at DCT. The DCT is the only gearbox that will be available with the 4-cylinder. So the Mercedes engine will get the dual clutch transmission, and that's the only option you'll get. But you will get an option of an automatic or a manual gearbox, yay, with the Toyota V6 engine, which of course will be continued to be available alongside the other one. The chassis is pretty much a version of the one that underpins the Aurora, so the same extruded and bonded aluminum chassis on that car. So it is Aurora based, but compared to the Aurora, while it has the same wheelbase, it is slightly longer, slightly wider, and slightly taller. So they're calling it the sports car architecture. So although it's based on that existing platform, it's kind of like a new platform. But when you say it's a new platform, it's like, well, how long is it going to be around for when this is the last one that's going to have a petrol engines in it. Going forward, Lotus, of course, as they've already announced with the Evija, which is their hypercar, the 2,000 horsepower one, is going to be entirely electric. That's the plans in the thing. But there are changes to this platform, so things like a new subframe, new uprights, new wishbones, new engine mounting, new steering rack, new brakes, all the rest of it. So this is a completely upgraded, updated, and new platform. The interesting thing about this car is that the Evora on current run-out price starts at £85,000. So, you know, Lotuses aren't as cheap as we used to think they were. That's £85,000 for the current Evora. This thing, all brand new, all singing, all dancing, is mooted at starting at less than £60,000. So that's something quite in itself right there. Like I said, on sale by early next year. Now, let's get into the whole discussion regarding this car. Now, just over a year ago, in fact, in February 2020, I did a video which is on this channel, and this was a video after I had seen an article in Autocar magazine where they had pretty much mooted that the last sign-off car in the current style of cars Lotus was producing before switching entirely to electrification was going to be an Esprit, or the return of the Esprit badge. And I was quite excited by that. I was like, okay, last of the old school cars, the Esprit badge is going to come back. Maybe it will have a looks. Maybe it'll be like you know, like a resto mod type car or a continuation type car or something like that. But sadly, no. So there is, to me, a tinge of disappointment here that this car is not the Esprit reborn. It doesn't look anything like the Esprit. It's not going to be given the Esprit name. Of course, it does have the E name, as all Lotuses do, or most of them do. But it is not the Esprit, and very much from the styling. Now, when I first saw this thing, I was like, wow, that looks really good. You cannot help but think that, oh, it looks a bit Ferrari-ish. Some people have said McLaren. I wouldn't say McLaren, but I would say Ferrari-ish, definitely, especially with the big side scoop and the nostrils around the headlights and stuff like that. I think those are mid-engine Ferrari signatures at the moment. But the interesting thing is that whilst from the front and the front three quarters, it has that Ferrari look, but from the side, pure side profile, it's a bit more Alfa Romeo 4C, a little bit like that, but also a little bit more, it feels taller. It feels like a bit more of a pyramid. It kind of goes up a little, just a tad more than you would want. It's almost like it needed to be elongated a bit more. It's like the Evora is more resolved in that contour and that silhouette, in the way that the roofline goes up and just enough and then goes back down again. In this one, it just seems to go a little bit too far up and then goes back. I mean, I'm sure that's for improved accommodation. Certainly they're saying that egress and ingress will be much easier in this car than it has been on previous Lotuses of that nature. It's a biggish car though. I mean, it's nearly 2 meters wide now. So I mean, again, whereas you take something like an Elise and you can just bars to, you know, with restrictions in London, but with that one, you're going to have to be a bit more tentative. We are getting up to supercar levels of size here. I mean, you know, as in, if you don't know if you saw the live video footage of the release of the car that was broadcast yesterday at 7:30 UK time, they had Jensen Button in there, and several times he said it's not fair to call this a junior supercar, and I can see what he means, although I haven't physically seen this thing, but just from the pictures and from the dimensions that I've read, I can see what he means. That's pretty much supercar levels. It's only slightly smaller than the what we are, Ferrari F8 right now, whatever it is, tribute to. I'm kind of losing track of these, but anyway, that one. So the other thing to say about it is the styling. So moving on to the styling, you still have Evora styling cues in it. So that way the side profile pinches, sort of goes inward and then pinches before coming back out again. I think that is an Evora cue, but it's been accentuated in this thing. What it does have is it have the mini interpretation of the side intakes of the Evija, which has these massive intakes, of course, that go all the way through to the back of the car. Talking to the back of the car, I do like the rear styling of the Emira. I think it is very slick, very nice. It's just enough detailed and design to make it interesting, but to not be fussy, if you see what I mean, and not to be outlandish or outrageous the way the Evija deliberately is, in fact, you know, with the lights, with the massive gaping vents at the back and the circular lights around them to emphasize that. But I think it's very well resolved. So my only issue with it is just that side profile. I just think the design, the shape of it is just slightly a little bit too tall. But other than that, I think it looks fantastic. How does it compare to the Evora and the Elise and the Exige? I still think the Elise is a very pretty car. I still think so. I think the Elise to me is just so clean, so nice, so well resolved, perfectly proportioned, compact, but meaningful. I do like the way it's done. So yeah, but it's spectacular. I think it's probably one of the best looking new Lotuses off the bat, if you see what I mean, apart from the Evija, which is pretty dramatic. And this thing, I think, you look at it and you go, right, because most of the time these cars come out, even the Elise Mark 1, it needed to evolve into the Mark 2 and Mark 3, and then I think the Mark 3 is the best one, but Mark 2 is also quite good. But it needed to have that evolution. Whereas this one, the Emira, you just go, yeah, that's done. That's oven ready, as we want to say in Britain. Well, we were after Brexit, but let's not get into any of that. Other things I want to talk about is the interior on this thing. So this interior is, oh my God. So the thing about the Elise and the Exige, and to a lesser extent the Evora, is the Spartan cabins. Basically in the Elise you get an open, you can see the chassis, you can see the metal, you get a steering wheel, you get the pedals, and you get a gear lever, and then so what more do you need? And for the drivers, as they say at Lotus, right? And you go, yeah, that's what I need, that's what I want, And to be honest, if you're talking about purity of experience, purity of driving, then yeah, that's all you really need. But looking at the pictures and the video they showed yesterday at the Emira, that's properly plush. I mean, there's a proper digital panel, and just reading the spec, it's got all the driver's aid systems, all of that, the active cruise control on a Lotus. Can you imagine that? And all the infotainment system, everything is there. It's all touchscreen. It's, so you go, wow. I mean, so that's really upping the game to kind of, Porsche Cayman levels, if you like, which is, of course, what that car is going to be aimed at, what the Evora was kind of aimed at as well. And of course, you can see that the quality of that, inevitably, if it's coming through from the Geely family, such as Geely or Geely, whatever you want to call them, such as Volvo, because, you see the stuff in the LEVC, the London Taxi, and some of the switchgear in there is very much from Volvo. And that's all pretty good stuff. So you can't go wrong, really, can it? So yeah, it's going to be a big step up in terms of the interior comfort and convenience in the new car. So moving on to my final thoughts about the Emira. Is it Lotus saving its best for last in terms of the current era of ICE, if you like? By that I mean internal combustion engine, because as they repeatedly say, this is the last car that's going to come out from Lotus that is not electrified. So from here on, all their cars are going to be electric. Now that's a whole different discussion. I'm not going to get into that in this video, because I've done in other videos about the whole electric versus petrol versus what a hybrid, etc., and whether that is the future or isn't, or whether it's a stepping stone or part of the future. That's a whole other video. You can find other videos that I've done on this. So I have my own feelings and reservations about that. But anyway, because of the 2030 deadline, most of the manufacturers are moving to full electrification anyway, and at some point that's what we're going to end up with, whether we can charge them and drive them or not. But again, another video, another discussion, another topic. How do I feel about all of this? Now, the issue I have is that the whole thing, to me, as a Lotus fan, and one good thing I should mention about the Emira, still has hydraulic steering. That's good. That feel that I love so much from the Elise and the Exige and the Evora, where the steerings are just alive and constantly chatting to you. Thankfully, hopefully, that will still be there in the Emira, so we'll still get to feel what it's like for the drivers, as they say. Now, however, as we're moving to the era of electrification and autonomous cars and stuff like that, then inevitably that is going to change. The complexity levels are going to go way up, because the cars are more complex. Yes, people say they're simplified because there's less to go wrong. There's just a motor and a battery, but actually it's not as simple as that. They are more complex, they are more complicated. And of course, with the advent of that technology, you then add a whole load of other systems to it that traditionally you wouldn't have in a normal car with just a combustion engine and stuff. So, and plus, of course, they will be automatic or one speed, which is how electric cars are, or some other variation thereof, but they certainly aren't going to be manual. And of course, one of the joys of driving for the drivers is to self-shift, is to drive a manual car, is to feel that engagement with the car, is to feel in control of it, and to do that through a manual shift. Thankfully, the Emira is going to be offered with a manual shift, but I suspect it might be the last Lotus to be offered like that, and I'm going to find that very, very sad. So to wrap the thought process up about this, I am wondering that is this the last real Lotus? so to speak, from the sense that I understand it, and from my contemporaries, if you like, or my generation would understand Lotus to be. Lotus, as much as people complain about, oh, it's a bit, there's not a lot in it, and, it's basic and, it's simple. And like, to people like me, it's like, yeah, that's the best part. That's how it should be. That's all you need. That's all you get. What more do you want, But that's all changing now. That's definitely changing. And even with the Emira, that's going to change, because it's going to be the most sophisticated, refined, and comfortable Lotus, I guess, so far. But having said that we have had Lotuses like the Esprit, like the Elite, like the Eclat, which were Grand Tourers. So they were more plusher. They had leather interiors and all the rest of it. So it's not unprecedented. But of course, they were still very much analog. They were still very much manual. So it's a whole different story. But so regarding the Emira, my fear about the Emira, and I've yet to be convinced about the Avia and stuff like that. I think the Avia is basically a statement car. I think because it's a 2,000 brake horsepower hypercar. It's not everybody's going to have one of those. And it's limited production anyway. So to me, that's a statement car. That's a statement halo car. That's like, look what we can do, which I think is fine. You had to make that statement. You had to make that announcement. You had to make that splash in the ocean of the media avalanche that is the new world of electric cars and electrification in the automotive industry. So you had to do that. So that's fine. So I forgive Lotus for that. But I think that that's going to trickle down into the other Lotuses going forward. And to me, then the Emira, the Princess, is pretty much going to be the last one as far as I understand Lotus to be. I will wait for Lotus to prove me wrong. Let me know what you think of the Emira in the design and the styling and the interior and the engines and the drivetrain, but most importantly, what it means, what it represents, and how is it that what they've done is they've kind of confused people with this car, because it's like, oh, here's a brand new car. We've got rid of all the old ones. Here's a brand new car. It's designed to look a little bit like a mini Evia, and it's our way forward, but actually it's not our way forward, because this is the last one that's going to have, a petrol drivetrain and a manual gearbox and all the rest of it. It's a little bit, there's a bit of confusion there in the messaging, although I can see that it's kind of what it's meant to be, is like a bridge between what has gone and what is to come. Let me know your thoughts about this. I would love to get your feedback. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you're subscribing to youtube.com/browncarguy and hit the bell icon and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my videos. Whilst you're at it, subscribe to browncarguy.com and follow me on social media by just searching for my hashtag. That's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even on TikTok. If you love my content, then please consider sponsoring and supporting it, and you can do that over at patreon.com/browncarguy. And you know what? You can use my platforms to promote your product, service, or brand. My YouTube channel is now closing in on 3,000 subscribers as I record this. Total views are nearly 500,000, and the reach just over the last month is nearly 1 million. So join these amazing people as my patrons, including Mohammed Humaid in the UAE, Partha in India, a tech guru and social media consultant. Find him on parthans.com. Tom Conway Gordon here in the UK, Isaac Beauchard in the US. He's got some great deals on cool cars at bespokeautos.com. Reza Adil, check him out at Alizadeh Cigars on Instagram. Mohammed Qasim, business consultant. You can find him at wehms.com. Siraj Abbasi at Tiles Italia on Instagram for luxury floor and wall tiling. Mark Waddell in Canada. Zach Kogiani, a globe-trotting pilot with amazing images for sale at zachkogiani.com. And last but not least, my school champ Shaheer Hakki. Thanks for watching. More cool vids on the way. Catch you again in the next one.